Hey everybody, welcome to Full Tilt, your tech industry leadership talks. I am Dawn Zoldi, the host, and I'm the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We are so fortunate today to have an incredible leader with us, Cameron Chell, or Cam Chell, he goes by Cam, the CEO and president of Draganfly. Cam, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Dawn, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I love anytime I get a chance to interact and work with you. So thanks for the honor of being here.
Well, look, Cam is kind of a regular. He's been a member of our crew before there was a crew because he kicked off our year on the Donna Jones podcast for Technology Showcase Month, and is still our #1 viewed podcast. So if you haven't seen that, go back and check it out. He's also our #1 all-time listened Clubhouse session. So on the Drone Law Connections, check that out. There's great other content on there that we're not going to be covering because this podcast is really about leadership. And frankly, it was the Donna Drones podcast that inspired this. When we dial off from the public, we take a couple minutes to talk to folks about life and leadership. And it was those incredible stories that we felt had to come out. And so I think that's a great segue to Cam to talking a little bit about #1, can you just very briefly, for those that don't know you, just give us kind of that 30-second elevator speech bio?
So first of all, congrats on this the Full Tilt. It's awesome, and you highlighting leadership is entirely appropriate because the leadership that you show in many industries that you work in, but in particular law and drone industry is it's really important. I don't know that you really appreciate or know how important and how valuable you are in the emerging commercial drone space in particular. And so I just, on behalf of the entire industry, I just kind of want to do a big shout out, Dawn. And you're absolutely one of our most important contacts from Draganfly's standpoint, but also just the entire industry. And I know my sentiment is widely shared. So super quick, my background is, I was really lucky. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. Both my parents were small business owners. They weren't called entrepreneurs back then. My dad was the local butcher in a very small town. He also had a ranch, and my mom was the local florist. So to me, like that's all I ever knew was, you're going to go to school and then you're going to start working. Like it wasn't that university or those types of things, weren't potentially options or weren't talked about, or I didn't really know about them, but they just weren't in the lexicon of what we did. None of my brothers and sisters attended university. They're all quite a bit older than me. We all just worked and entrepreneurs and that's just kind of what you did. And so, I won't bore you too much with the detail, but when I was about 24, started a company called FutureLink, which was I always had a little bit of a tech wannabe-ness about me. And so when I was 24, started a company called FutureLink, which was a server company, basically a data warehouse company. And our idea was that we were going to take servers and serve up applications on this new thing that was coming called the internet. And everybody thought it was a crazy idea. And long story short, it was the original cloud computing company. It wasn't called that. We didn't know that's what it was going to be. We didn't, we just thought it was a cool idea. And again, long story short, we got some revenue. We got Microsoft as a client. We got, some auditing firms as clients, and we ended up becoming a .com. Again, we didn't even know what that was. And,
wow.
The company had, like 80 million in revenue, and I was 26, and we went public, and it was a $3.5 billion market cap. And, I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought I knew everything about everything. Absolutely. And so the kind of a little bit of the classic story, I was too big for my britches. We brought in a chairman. He ended up doing the right thing, which was firing me. And so I lost control of, my company and stuff, had a little bit of an exit. Went on and worked and built a number of other companies, got to work with some great organizations like NetTeller, which became one of the largest payment companies in the world, in particular in the gaming area. And I just was on top of the world, or so I thought, and just thought nothing could stop me. But I was basically an arrogant prick, and really had way too big for my britches, and had some humbling coming. And so I happened to be in New York in 9/11 and at the base of the towers when the first plane hit Tower 2, and my life changed. My life didn't change. My life was on the path of changing. It was on a roller coaster heading down fast because I just wasn't, in my opinion, a really solid, stable person. And but that just kind of, for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't in control. I was absolutely not in control of anything in my life. And so I ended up going down a path of alcohol and drug addiction, and literally within a couple of years, I spiraled down quickly and ended up being bankrupt and homeless.
Wow.
And was, and I didn't have to be homeless. Like, I had lots of people that were willing to help and lots of people that had tried to help a lot. But homelessness isn't about being broke or not being capable. It's there's a whole mental wellness factor around that. And homelessness itself is an addiction. In my opinion. So any long story short, I got myself cleaned up. That was coming up on 14 years here in September. And after many years of trying, I finally got myself clean, and that was just about 14 years ago. And I've been super lucky to have a family. I went through lymphomic cancer since then. We've got lots of trials and tribulations. Just because I got clean didn't mean life got easy.
Right.
But it does mean that I can cope with life because I'm clean today, and I've got some tools, and I get to work with great people like yourself. And, we're building some really cool companies, Draganfly in particular. And that's the short recap. Sorry if it was too long.
Wow. So that was a little bit more than 30 seconds, but first of all, Cam, thank you for sharing that, because so many folks don't realize how important mental health is. And if they ever had a struggle, and I think many people do, and I think many people silently suffer and don't talk about it. I think it's really critical to have these conversations. And, this is a leadership podcast, and you and I talked about before we came, on camera, the fact that these experiences shaped your leadership style today. And, you chose this theme for today of leading with trust. So can you, first of all, tell us what that means to you, leading with trust, and why you chose that theme for this podcast?
Well, in my view, I think the only currency in the world is trust. So if we think about something even like a physical currency, call it a US dollar or the euro or whatever the case is, it doesn't have anything behind it, quite practically. It has an economy, it has everything, but it's really all about people trusting that. And when it comes down to, leadership, it's 100% trust. Sometimes you do the wrong thing. And sometimes people know you're doing the wrong thing, making the wrong move, following the wrong strategy, and people still work with you, because they trust your intention, or they trust your integrity, or they trust where it's going to get them, or they trust that you will sort it out. And, there's a great example is if you're doing, a business deal with somebody, and if you have enough trust to do that deal on a handshake, it's a much less expensive deal. But if you have to go through, and normally you do, but if you have to go through, months and months of like really detailed paperwork and unbelievable work around, what if scenarios and all the things that our very good lawyers take us through to do, it's a lot more expensive, right? And it doesn't mean that you can't shake hands and get going and then do that work. But it's
Right.
but the ability to do a deal on a handshake, or look an employee in the eye, or a customer, and they just trust that, no matter what, you're going to get it done right, or you've got their best interest at heart. To me, that's the entire foundation of leadership.
Yeah, Cam, I couldn't agree more. Being an attorney myself, I actually get really annoyed when a client will send me some 11-page, 12-page document they want me to sign to like write a blog post for them or something. It's like, seriously, you want me to indemnify you? Like, you want me to write like a blog post a month, and I need an 11-page document to make that happen. And I agree. I think, trust and relationships go hand in hand. So how does your life experience, in particular, your struggle with addiction in the past, your experience with homelessness, how does that inform your idea of trust as you work with others and those relationships that you've since like grown and developed?
Yeah, I think that, everybody has different lessons and comes from different circumstances, but certainly for me, the lesson has been, don't let perfection get in the way of progress. And what I mean by that is, at the beginning of, a relationship, let's say it's an employee relationship or a customer relationship, or something to that degree, or in that context, I would really try to make sure that everything looked perfect, acted perfect. They had all their expectations set out. They had it was just like amazing, right? And so,
Right.
the problem was I had nowhere to go but down. I would never be able to meet those expectations. So what I really try to do today is just approach it much more authentically. When I was on the street, I made a lot of promises, and a lot of people, I can be convincing, right? It's one of my,
It's a blessing and a
characters.
curse.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely, right? And so, I disappointed a lot of people, and like really close people, like kids, and like my kids, and family members, and like people that you don't disappoint. And so, and I realized that it doesn't really matter what you say up front. Maybe that can get your foot in the door, but it really only matters what you do. So when I meet with customers or I meet with employees now, certainly, I do my best to represent what we think we're going to try to achieve together and what's possible. But I'm super candid about the fact that, hey, this might not work and this might go wrong. And I don't try to talk them out of it, but I immediately just follow up with the next step. I let them see the blemishes. I let them see where we're not perfect. It's where, like, if people trust you when you do that. They know it's authentic. Everybody knows that nothing's perfect. Everybody knows that you're bullshitting when it's like, oh, you're going to deliver the perfect this and the perfect product and the perfect service and whatever. It all, like, it's like the Oz behind the curtain thing. I do my best to just drop, right, and then just kind of put it out there and say, this is what we'll try to get going together, and then build up team, right? And I just find that works so much better if I do my best to remain vulnerable, which isn't easy in those relationships. It at least provides a foundation for trust to start.
Yeah, yeah. And it sounds like maybe in the past, because you mentioned, kind of too big for your britches, that idea of leading with trust wasn't really maybe so important when you were 26 or when you had such incredible early success in your career and maybe had a little bit of a bigger head and had a lot of people had maybe a persona to continue in other people's eyes and promises to make that maybe you even knew that you couldn't meet. So I think all of those lessons learned are really key. Cram, I love the term that you use too, authentic. That is, I think, also a critical word when you're talking about relationships, whether in life or in business, because if you're not real with people, people can see right through that, I think. And I think, I have a TED Talk that I put out, gosh, several years ago. It's kind of a little bit that my P3 Tech Consulting is a play on the 3 Ps, which is passion, purpose, and purity. And purity, that third P, is all about authenticity. I talk about lawyers in the courtroom. It's similar, like on any stage, like whether it's in a podcast or in a relationship or in life. If you're not who you are, if you're not real with people, they will cut through that like a knife. And so what did you mentioned growing up on this ranch, Cam, with like these incredible parents, your dad's like small town, but the local butcher, your mom's the local florist, like doing incredible things. You got brothers and sisters. What did you learn from them, as you watched how they operated with others in their business about this kind of leadership with trust?
Yeah, so we grew up right on the edge of town, and then my dad's ranch was a little ways away, and so we were a working family. We're blue collar, and my father, I clearly recall him telling me many times in my life, you're never going to be the smartest, the biggest, the fastest, anything. The only thing that you can do is that you can work hard. And so I took that to heart, right? And probably too much to heart. And what's come to me in life is that he actually wasn't talking about working stupid hard, like ridiculous hours. Yeah, well, he
Right.
probably was a bit because he did, and we all do, and all my brothers and sisters do as well. But what he was talking about was what you can actually control or manage. You can, like, that's the only thing I can do is what I can do, right? I
Right.
can work harder, I can do it, but I can't control all the outside external forces. And that was the big thing that hit me on 9/11, and it took me, almost 10 years to work through that, is because all of a sudden I wasn't in control of anything. And the person
Yeah.
beside me is dead, and it's like I wasn't in my control, and the fact that I'm alive wasn't in my control. And so,
Right.
the kind of like the full circle lesson that came to me is that all you can do is just is manage what you can do. So, my management or leadership or business philosophy, prior 9/11 was performance and results. Nothing
Yeah.
else matters, right? I'm
Right.
going to get
Right.
the performance and I'm going to get the results. And that was costing me huge other aspects in my life and in my relationships and in my businesses and my employees. Like, nobody could trust me. They knew what to expect, right? Which
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
whatever it was going to take to get the performance and the result, right? Which is a very self-centered perspective to take. But I learned that I can't control the performance and the results. I can control
Yeah.
what I do with it. And the best way for me to get the best performance and results out of myself and the people around me is to build an authenticity and to be able to create trust. So I came out of this very small town with this ridiculous work ethic and underdog kind of inferiority complex, and where I've luckily at least I'm comfortable with where I'm at right now, is that I am enough, right, and that I'm never going to be perfect, and that's actually the beauty of the whole thing, and that you just got to work at whatever it is that you're doing. And so whether you're developing a new product, a startup, managing a team, my suggestion would, well, be vulnerable, right? And that's how you're going to build trust. It also, actually it's a much more secure position if you set the expectation that this is going to be the performance and this is going to be the result. Not that you shouldn't have expectations, but if you set the criteria that is what is going to have to happen in order to do it, you have nothing to do but fail. And there's nothing wrong with failing, but if you don't leave yourself room to grow through that failure and become something more, I mean, you're going to end up going down this empty path similar to what I did.
Wow, you're hitting on so many things. And by the way, I want to do a shout out to Promodrone. Jamar Williams is out there. Cam and I, by the way, were on Lady Gaga's stage in Las Vegas with Cam back in January as part of Edge 22. Promodrone and Jamar doing amazing things. He's saying so real, and Cam just said the magic word for trust, which is vulnerability. And so let's talk a little bit about this, because this is about leadership, right? And leaders lead people. And I agree with you 100%, Cam. People, they know you, and they frankly, they follow your example. And so knowing, all of these lessons learned about the kind of performance results mindset that maybe can be toxic to employees, and this kind of change of mind and heart that you had about vulnerability, trust, relationships. How do you model that to your employees? And I ask this because, and I'm going to ask a question about balance here in a second, because I think that is the hardest thing for someone like you, and frankly, like me. I'm going to assume you're type A personality, right? Like I just heard, I grew up with a ridiculous work ethic. So how do you ratchet yourself back in such a way that you can be the person that your employees should emulate, and that in other words, they're not seeing you slaving away at your desk, if you will, not taking lunch, working till midnight, sending texts at all hours, all weekend long. How do you manage that to be that leader that emulates the trust that they should instill in you?
Yeah. So, it's a great question, because I am that guy that's at the office at 3 a.m. I don't take lunches. I do not like doing socials. If we're gonna have something social, like, what work is gonna get done? That is like deeply ingrained in who I am.
That's how you grew up.
That's how I grew up, right? And we have lost employees because they're like, dude, we can't keep up, right? Or it's just I'm worried that he's going to send something late at night, right? Or whatever the case is. So,
Yeah.
so I don't try to be something I'm not. But I think everybody has a different version of balance. I do not have an expectation from employees to pound through the weekends and to be up at 3 a.m. and to work past 5. I don't, right?
Yeah.
I do for me because I absolutely love doing it, right? Now, listen, I'm also a guy, I'm not a big, I did sports when I was younger, but I'm not a big sports fan. I don't go to Vegas. I don't do boys trips. I don't do, but I've got a family, right? I've got, at 5 o'clock, actually, my day shuts down and I'm done. And the weekends, my day shuts down. I coach 2 soccer teams, I do volunteer work. I do all that. And I work in particular my daughter's school so I find my balance in that. And I have an incredible wife who keeps me on the beam as well. But kind of adhering to okay, this is how the balance should be because the latest management book said it was. The problem I have with that is, I'd read a book about Steve Gates and I try to be more Bill Gates and I try to be more like Bill Gates. And then I'd read a book about Steve Jobs and I'd try to be more like Steve Jobs. And the whole time I'm reading, I'm going, I'm going to be such a failure because in the back of my mind, I know I'm not like Steve Jobs.
Well, right? that's not authentic. That's not being authentic to you, right?
I have huge admiration for an Elon Musk, but could I manage like him or not a chance? I want, when I sit down in meetings, I want people to walk away feeling empowered and positive and that's just my, so these different styles, I don't think that, I think it really true leadership. I think anybody can be a great leader, but the first step isn't trying to find out what true leadership is. The first step is trying to find out who the hell you are, right? So spend the time internally, spend the time on yourself, do the mental work. If you do that, your leadership style will blossom and it won't be anybody else's leadership style. In business, we talk about finding the strategic differentiator. What's going to make Draganfly different? What's going to make Promo Drone different? The only thing that makes them different is culture. Can they have better product? Can they have better financial? Yeah, they can, but it all comes down to culture. And the leadership culture isn't about, Microsoft's culture or Amazon's culture or Elon Musk's culture. It's about your freaking culture. And the only way you find that culture is if you do the deep work. If you, see a counselor, get into step meetings, get into meditation, find out what those limitations are, or everybody's, I'm going to use a word I very rarely use here, but everybody's fucked up. Everybody's fucked up in their head, right?
Oh God, YouTube just blocked us.
And your courage is how willing you are to go into that, right? And work through those issues. To me, that's courage.
Well,
right?
knowing your flaws, knowing your flaws. And look, Cam, I've shared this with a couple audiences, but I thought I was a pretty good leader, right? There I was, a colonel in the Air Force. I'm going to share this story because this was deeply impactful to me. It made me look hard in the mirror as to what the way I acted and how it caused other people to react. Like you, not taking lunch, rarely taking leave because, as General Paz said in our very first Till podcast, I took myself too seriously, right? And especially in my case as a woman, I didn't want to be that colonel, right, that went to her kids, whatever, little award ceremony in kindergarten because, oh, look at her. So I didn't do those things, Cam. And I'll tell you, it all came to pass when I was a very senior colonel and I had an inspection, and all of a sudden I'm hearing from the inspectors morale is really bad. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, yeah, morale is horrible in your office. I'm like, well, what do you mean? So I was just like, holy shnikes. So I literally asked them. The inspectors left. I gave everybody a piece of paper. I said, here's what I heard. The TPS cover sheet stuff, we're going to fix. I'm not worried about that. When I hear morale is bad, that's when I'm concerned. So take out a pen and a paper and write, morale is bad, why, what we should do about it. And the answers I got, Cam, were just like, Colonel Zoldi never takes lunch, so we feel like we can't go to lunch. Yeah. Colonel Zoldi goes to the gym so early, so we don't feel like we can go at the end of the day, even though I absolutely told them they could. They were watching me, and they were making assumptions. And so it was, once that information came out and I could address how people felt, I was completely authentic. And I said, you are not me. And I do not expect you to be me. And what I literally went around, I made everybody put on they had little name tags on their door. I made them put on there, what day and time they were doing PT. And if I walked by their office and it was that day and time and they were in their office, I'm like, why are you here? I would kick them out and make them go to PT, because it's like, you are not me. I am not you. And I'm not expecting you to be me. So stop trying to be me, be yourself. I cannot be, responsible for you failing to take leave, failing to take care of yourself or your family. That's not what I want from you. And I'll tell you, it took about 6 months. A couple people, retired, which needed to go. They were toxic personalities. Completely 180 changed the culture of that office. Once I knew there was a problem, but I knew about myself. I knew what my work ethic was. What I didn't realize, Cam, was everybody was trying to be me. And because that's what they thought I wanted, despite what I had said. So I think that is like the hardest thing. So let's talk about your family and balance. You just talked about, I thought I heard a little bit of a dichotomy here. You said, I coach soccer games, I volunteer, I shut down at 5, but you also earlier said, as the lawyer me coming out and cross-examining you now, you said you're sending emails off at 3 a.m. So
Yeah.
how are you doing that? Is your thought process like, hey, they're asleep, so I'm not impacting my family?
Yeah. No, listen, you want to get vulnerable here. I'm up, my first meeting starts at 3:15. And I have a meeting, and then I have a workout, and then I got a whole series of meetings. That I whip home. I get the kids ready for school with my wife, pack lunches. I drive them to school. I get back to the office, and I go nonstop until 5. 5, I leave the office. It takes me a few minutes to get home, and then it's like, But I'll tell you that it's a hardcore, and I do that in the morning because I know that they're not up, and I think it doesn't affect them, but I'm tired by 8:30 or 9. Right.
And so it does.
And that's an issue. That's an issue in our house. It's an issue.
Yeah.
It's like an issue we're working through for sure. And like, again, hey, listen, I'm not perfect, right? And my wife's made adjustments, and my kids have made adjustments, and my son and I have talked about this, and so so Friday mornings now I'm sleeping. Weekends I used to work from 3 till 7 on the weekends too. 3 in the morning till 7 on the weekends too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because nobody was up, and then it still gave me the whole weekend with them. But the problem was I was just too tired. So one of the commitments I made to them is I sleep in on the weekends, right? Which when you're used to getting up at 3, sleeping
it's very hard to sleep in.
Very tough. But I do it. I lay there in bed with my eyes open. It's just like great. But I'm getting better. Actually, last weekend was great. I loved it. It was and the littlest one came into bed with me, and it was So I'm getting better, and I'm figuring though it's always a moving plate, right? It's the sand's always shifting a little bit, but great catch, and there's no formula.
No, there isn't. And by the way, I want to also do a quick shout out. Tony Drummond is out there. Tony, dear friend, incredible entrepreneur and leader in her own right. Prestige Air Group, Global Aero Management Group, also share that stage with us at Edge. Says, Cam, thanks for sharing your journey. I get something new each time I hear you speak. You've been such a strong mentor to so many of us. You are so incredibly motivating. And of course, I couldn't agree more. So, what I tell people, and I think you'll agree, Cam, is like, balance is hard.
Yeah.
Like, the analogy I give to people is, the Bosu ball in the gym, that like, it's like a black plastic with a half dome ball. Have you ever seen one of those? Like they use them in yoga and fitness
every morning.
So if you flip that over on the curved side and you try to do squats or balance on that thing, that's the analogy I give people. Like, try to balance on a Bosu ball. It takes every single muscle in your body. It is hard work. And so balance takes work. It takes deliberation. It takes thought. It takes laying in bed, like you said, at 6 a.m. on a Saturday when you want to get up and finish those emails, but you promised your family you wouldn't. So laying there with your eyes open with all the stuff going through your brain. So hard to do. So what tip would you give to the people listening? One thing you've learned along the way that you would want to share with them. Let's just focus, keep it on the balance topic, to try to help others, maintain balance. Or what's one tip that you would recommend?
Yeah, so I think if there was something that the easiest thing to do is probably meditation, right? That's probably the one thing. Like if I'm just getting super, super practical, right? And if my son came to me and said, Dad, I'm never going to see you again, what's the one thing I should do in my life to improve it? I would say meditate, right? Even if it's 2 minutes at a time, where all you do is just be quiet and listen to your breath. yeah, you know, like what I have found is that when I don't do that, I get wrapped up, and when I do that, everything just flows so much better. And there is not a person that I've talked to who, you don't have to be an expert. You can think while you're meditating, you can do whatever, but just getting some sort of meditation practice, it's humbling because it puts you in the context is that the entire world does not revolve around you, right? You revolve around it. And it puts you in harmony with it. I'm not getting frou-frou or anything like that. And it's very practical. So to me, that's, you know, there's tons of things I'd love to say, but if only had one thing, I'd say just meditate, even 3 minutes in the morning. Your day will be 100% different.
Yeah, we've got, you know, everybody's got their own way that they deal with stress and try to get balance. Chris Wedgeworth, one of our regulars out there, he's apparently flies a drone. You know, for me lately, you know, I walk my dogs. You know, I just get outside, I put my headphones on, listen to some, you know, 80s hairband music, and I just go. And you know, it's more like a sniff, right, versus a walk, you know, because my one dog, she's got sniff everything, you know, but it's like I got my headphones on, so yeah, you know, it's like peace and serenity for me. You know, everybody's got their thing, and I think you know, meditation is absolutely one way to center yourself, as you said, to have some balance and realize there's something bigger than you out there. It's not all about you. In fact, you know, I'm not really a religious person, at least anymore. That's a whole different story we're not going to get into here. But there is a book called A Purpose-Driven Life, and I love the very first sentence. It is not about you. Period. That is the first sentence of the book. And that was one that was just like such a powerful short sentence that if everybody abided by that, what a different world it would be. So that's a great segue, maybe, Cam. You know, a lot of leaders, you know, that are lifelong learners. Are there any particular books or anything that you would commend to people that they might want to check out? Just, you know, whether it's about leading with trust, which is our theme today, or just leadership in general.
Yeah. So one of my favorite books of all time is called How. Dove, I forget the gentleman's last name, just having a brain fart, but How, it's a very difficult title, but if you type in How in parentheses, it'll come up. But the title is How What You Do, How You Do What You Do Means Everything. And so just type
How
in,
you do what you do means
anyway,
everything.
Dove Stevenson. I know I'm getting it wrong.
Okay.
And I haven't read it for about a year.
And I think Chris might be asking me what the name of the book I just mentioned. It's called The Purpose-Driven Life. And it is, you know, just, you know, caveat, it is a very religious focused book. You know, but that first sentence doesn't really matter like what your, you know, thinking is in that regard. I think that sentence just says it all, really. It's not about you. There's something else out there, something bigger than all of us.
How you do what you do means everything. That to me, it's like that is my favorite book on trust. And then Stephen Covey's son also wrote a great book on trust. Which again, I probably haven't read for 2 years now, but absolutely fat. Those are the two, you know, the two books I would recommend that anybody just jump all over.
Absolutely. Oh, it looks like somebody popped in the chat the name of that book. It's Dan Seidman, maybe. I'm looking at the tiny words. Okay, very, very cool. I'm definitely I'm going to check that out. And yes, hello, or 80s hair bands, absolutely. You know, they fuel my life. Now y'all know my secret sauce. Okay, so let's talk about, I usually do this at the end as kind of like a flash series, like boom, 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 but I like getting this into this a little bit more with you. Who would you say your hero is and why?
Yeah, my hero are my parents, and they weren't, right. It's taken me time to realize that. You know, one of the resentments I had toward my father, and he passed away when I was fairly young, but was that he didn't push me harder. And
wow.
And
that's such a hard one, right? Like,
I
you
know,
want your kids to be happy and you don't want to be a jerk, but at the same time they need boundaries.
Yeah. And I was like, if he would have pushed me more in this area, I would have, like, look what I would have been, all those types of things. And and it's just so humbling now. I have kids in a great range of ages, and to understand now what he was doing, like, I'm just so grateful, like, that he didn't do that, and that he let me, like my strongest character traits are the ones about figuring things out and having to figure it out. He could have showed me, he could have taught me, he could, and he was more important that I learned how to learn. And I'm not an academic guy for the most part. I'm an academic wannabe. I'm not a scholastic individual, but I can really figure things out. And that is because of him. And my mom, as I say, I wish she would have pushed me harder. She drove me, like, this is before it was like the in thing to do, right? I'm at the age where it was very odd for, a woman to have her own business in a very small, conservative town. And she drove me 30 miles every day to go to track practice and football practice and hockey practice and
plus ran her business,
speech lessons and singing lessons and dance lessons. Like, I was a big kid. My mom put me in down. I was so mad at her, but she just, and so while I didn't get pushed, they gave me exposure to all of these things, like on a very small town level. But and so they're my heroes. They're absolutely my heroes. I mean, there's lots of other people I look up to, but they weren't. But as I got older, I realized how amazing they were.
So the big reveal, you just said you sing and dance.
No, I don't. I'm terrible. Well, I can speak okay, but I can't sing and dance. I'm a white guy. Come on. But
it's so funny. I actually I'm going to date myself here. Do you remember Denny Terrio and the Solid Gold Dancers way back in the day?
Oh, for sure.
That was my dream, to be a solid gold dancer. I took dance lessons through high school, and I was in choir. But those I had Byzantine Ukrainian nuns in high school that beat singing out of me. I just stopped singing because they took the joy out of it, sadly. But that's so funny that you went to dance and singing lessons, and she's doing all of these things like while running her business. And I assume probably, and maybe this is a wrong assumption, but maybe making dinners and like taking care of the family too. All of it? Holy
she wasn't probably as strong there. My brothers and sisters were a lot older and basically almost moved out at that time. But yeah, no, she still had all the 1960s and 70s woman expectations and a business and a family, and she was on all of those things. So today she's in a home and doesn't have a memory, and my one brother in particular takes amazing care of her. But I close to worship the ground they walked on for what they did, and that's what parents do. And we all just do our best. And I try to do my best too. And you can identify with this, I'm sure, to some degree. We all can as parents. Is that talk about leadership? Our kids are going to come out screwed up, right? To some degree, they're coming out with resentments and issues.
It's so weird because. Yeah, it's almost like that Billy Joel song, The Stranger, right? Like, it's like what mask you wear at work or in the office versus at home, and how different are those personas, and yet still very authentic, each of them. It's such a weird kind of dichotomy and that struggle with balance. Wow. So let's get back to Draganfly, and you've had so many things going on. Whether it's partnering with the Drone Racing League, your recent foray, kind of a more on the military side, but let's call it humanitarian side, with your drones and being used to transport medical supplies and for search and rescue in Ukraine. How have you taken this idea of leading with trust into where you are today in this business and the things that you're doing on a daily basis in Draganfly?
Yeah, so there's on the Ukraine thing in particular, I think there's probably a few different levels. So we're in an environment over there with an organization, and the mission's critical, and we don't have all the answers. Right. It's a kind of like a no mess around type thing. You can't really screw up. And so more than ever, we have to be very, very plain and vulnerable about what we can do, what we can't do, what we hope to do, and then, what we clearly need to try to do together as a team and what our strengths are. And so in doing so, we've made some incredible progress. But the fact of the matter is that every time something doesn't go right, which is a lot, the opportunity for progress accelerates because we demonstrate with our partners, or we work to demonstrate with our partners, that we don't know the answer and that we've got to collectively come up with the answer or a solution, or we respond quickly. We try to take every opportunity to build that trust. And in doing so, all the guards come down. We all start just like working towards that one, like that energy, that culture, that something about what's going to make it successful just comes together. And so I'm really excited about the project, as much because of the good that it's going to do and how it's unfolding, and of course the size of the potential orders and how it'll impact the world and all the rest of it, but also because of the use case that's happening within Draganfly and with our partners in the Ukraine. And I just see this starting to permeate. It's not perfect by any means, and we got lots of challenges at Draganfly, like I'm sure every company does, but you can really start to see this collaborative trust approach happen. And it's not a mantra that we're trying to pound down people's heads. We're just trying to live it and be vulnerable every single step of the way. And I do believe that does translate into our customer relationships, and eventually, that will translate into our shareholder relationships as well. If we look at some of the most trusted companies in the world, they're companies that generally have great earnings and such, but they're not necessarily the best earnings. They're the companies that people trust the most, right? That they're gonna, so that's our aim and goal.
Well, and there's one thing for certain about operating on a battlefield, is that there's absolute uncertainty, right? I think what they say is no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you have the ability to work with groups that are in that space and kind of evolving and learning together, I think is really, really cool. Cam, I can't believe we're like 3 minutes out here. So what I want to do is give you the time and the space to maybe leave the audience with any kind of parting or final thoughts you have on leadership in general, or leading with trust, as we kind of close out this particular episode, which has been phenomenal.
Well, Dawn, I feel like you've already given me so much time, and I probably took a bunch too, which was inappropriate as well. So I learned a lot from this talk, right? And it reiterates things that I've been thinking through and writing about and working on, certainly. But I'm more convinced than ever that trust is the currency by which leadership can happen. And rather than trying to make the perfect strategy and the perfect plan and all the things you need to do and how you need to deal with that team and then that team, and I always thought it was a project plan, and I realize now that it's not a project plan, right? It's a leadership by example, and that example isn't doing everything perfect in my mind. That example is just being exactly who you are, being authentic, being vulnerable, and allowing yourself not to be perfect amongst your peers and the people that you work with. I think your leadership style does not come. I think there's great things to learn out there, but your leadership style, comes from what you learn about yourself. And that is a very conscious thing. That's not something that in my opinion, you should leave to chance. Knowing what I know now, I would have left it to chance before. I'm like, hey, I'm what I am. I'm reading a book. This is how I'm going to do it now. That seems to be best. It's a flavor of the day. And what I've come to have the great honor of experiencing is that leadership style is going to come from doing the work in here, right? And the more work I do in here, the better the work is that comes out, and that I get to work with other people.
I love that, Cam. It's such a great summary. And you said something about the work in here, and I'm going to quote the incredible Lady Gaga. Actually, saw her in concert multiple times, and she's a huge advocate for mental health, amongst other things. And one thing she said that really stuck with me, and she said, if you're going to get up in your head, make sure you're taking somebody with you. And and she's like, she literally did that. She's sitting at the piano in her beautiful gown. It was her the tour. Tony Bennett wasn't there, but it was kind of like that big cabaret tour.
Yeah.
And that was just so impactful, and I think that's great advice. I think your advice is great. They dovetail together. Thank you so much for your leadership, for being authentic, for being vulnerable with us here today, for what you do at Draganfly. You guys are making a huge difference across the world, literally across the world. And so thanks for what you do. And we are at the top of the hour. So that's really all she wrote. You're going to see some tiles here on upcoming episodes, so I'm not going to go through those right now. I want to leave it where we are because I think it's just powerful, and that's really all she wrote. Subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. Dawn, you're amazing.